Thank you, Chair. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really delighted to be here giving you some of my thoughts in relation to the conditions that confront us as a people and as a nation. But I wish, ladies and gentlemen, that it could have been addressing you at a time when Barbados was able to punch above its weight. That was a time when Owen Arthur and the Barbados Labour Party were in charge of the economic development of this country. I wish, ladies and gentlemen, that I was addressing you at a time when unemployment was in single digits for the first time in the history of this country, but we know that that is not so. I wish I was addressing you, ladies and gentlemen, at a time when the banking system had so much money that the money trickled down to each and every one of us so that we were able to generate and keep this economy going. I wish, ladies and gentlemen, that I was addressing you at a time when construction was booming for 10, 12 years to the extent that all of the construction companies in this country were able to get some work, were able to make some money, and that money trickled down, right down to the laborers, right down to shops in Tweedside Road and Baxter's Road and Halls Road and Nelson Street. I wish I was addressing you at such a time. But you know as well as I do, ladies and gentlemen, that we are no longer living in those times. And I'm saying to you this evening that if we continue with what we have at this point in time, it will take a monumental effort on the part of the Barbados Labour Party when in office next to take us back to those glory days. That is what I want to say to you here this evening. You've heard from Santia, and she has been pushing for us to march, and that is important. But I want to go in a different direction this evening, as I normally do when I have the opportunity to address a public gathering of this nature. A public gathering that will inevitably and undoubtedly have persons who may be supporters of the Democratic Labour Party, or persons who may not necessarily support any party. Because what I like to do, and what I always feel compelled to do, is to have a conversation with you. So I want to speak to those of you, for example, who may be sitting at your windows or who may be in your patios listening to this meeting. I want to address my remarks primarily to you. And I say so, ladies and gentlemen, because there's a reality here that we cannot escape. If we are going to do this thing successfully, if we are going to start a movement to rescue, restore, and to rebuild Barbados, we must be able to convince those persons who support the Democratic Labour Party that the direction that the government is going is certainly wrong. We must be able to do that. We must be able to do that. And I know those of you who support the Democratic Labour Party, there's nothing wrong with that. You love your party, and I can tell you that those of us who wear red, we love and we are proud of the greatest political institution in the Commonwealth Caribbean. So there's nothing at all wrong with you liking yours. But there comes a time when you have to understand and you must feel that things simply are not going right. And I'm calling on you, those of you who may support the other side, to have the intestinal fortitude to say to your members of parliament, whichever constituencies they come from, that enough is enough. And I want to start my short discourse by going back to a report that was laid in the House of Assembly, I believe, in 2010. It had to do with the conditions and household. It was a survey that was done dealing with poverty in this country. And that is a significant report. It's a significant report because that report indicated very, very clearly that the Barbados Labour Party had done an outstanding job in alleviating poverty in this country and bringing poverty down to single-digit levels in Barbados. And that is important. Why? It's important because the Barbados Labour Party was able to build an economy that was able to sustain the level of social programs that we had in this country. That is one of the reasons why that report is important. The other part of it, however, is that the report indicated that poverty actually doubled within the last few years in Barbados, with about 19% of our population living in poverty, and another 10% were borderline. And that, if you compare and contrast the two, the Barbados Labour Party, by developing and growing an economy, was able to sustain the level of service in this country, was able to give people the opportunity to bring themselves out of poverty by providing employment opportunities, by providing training opportunities, and by providing a whole range of support services that were provided back then. But when you have a situation where you give no priority, certainly within the first few years of your existence as an administration, no priority at all to the economy, saying that you concentrating on building an economy, and we all know that if you don't have money, nothing else like that will work. And that is the situation that confronts us today. What the report also said, ladies and gentlemen, that most of the poverty that existed in Barbados existed along the urban corridor in the St. Michael districts, like the ones that we are in and surrounding us at this point in time, like the ones that I have the honor and the pleasure of representing. So most of the poverty is located within the St. Michael constituencies. And that is something that should have sent a sign to the government that somehow, somewhere along the line, its economic programs were not working. Because if people are getting poorer and poorer, something has to be wrong with your economic strategy and your growth strategy. And that is what has been happening in Barbados. Now, if that was back in 2010 when that report was laid, can you really imagine what is happening in 2014? Because in 2010, 2009, they were saying that the economy was in good shape. We certainly know that it was in good shape in 2008 because we left it so. They had a good wicket to bat on. But if it was bad in 2010, understand what has happened since then with all of the economic pressures that have been placed on people, especially the very people who the report said were among the poorest in the country. And I'm talking again, as I said, about the St. Michael districts, the urban corridor. That is what the report said. And so, with the laying off of people, with all the other economic hardships, there's no wonder why we are having some of the social tensions that exist in Barbados today. And it is a very significant issue and a very serious issue which people must have the guts to say to their representatives, enough is enough. There was a time, for example, when construction was booming. You look at a construction site in Barbados, you saw a whole heap of people working, including a lot of laborers from districts such as these. That no longer exists. The whole construction tempo has changed significantly to the point where a few companies are getting all of the work. A large number of the smaller and medium-sized construction companies are struggling or have ceased to exist or to operate. We've gone to a situation where we are using the concrete slabs, pre-concrete, the crane, which has replaced the laborers. The artisans are finding it difficult to get work. Carpenters, masons, plumbers, and so on. That is the reason, one of the reasons why we have the problem that we have now. Because the people who have those skills cannot find the work. Laborers cannot find work. And if those persons who live in these communities cannot find work, it means that the shops, the restaurants, the bars, and all the other services that are provided will not get the revenue that they want to get. And so we have this problem that has been going on for the last 6 or 7 years, the problem that will continue unless something serious is done to stop what is happening at this point in time. And so, when we say that it is time for action, that action must also be translated into action coming from people who may not support this party, but who have a national passion, a passion to see Barbados prosper. You must know, ladies and gentlemen, the quality of life that you are living now as compared with 7 or 8 years ago. You must know that there's a difference, a significant difference. And if that does not drive you to say something to those who you need to speak to, then I do not know what will. And it's going to get worse before it gets better. And that is the problem that we have right now, ladies and gentlemen. So, we have this situation, as I said, where the urban corridor continues to get poorer and poorer and poorer because we don't have enough economic opportunities. You don't have enough employment opportunities. Those persons who are working, you are working for low wages, so you're not earning enough to pull yourself out of the problem. And then when you look at the landscape of this country and all of the constituencies, welfare is under serious, serious pressure, ladies and gentlemen. And that is not because the welfare officers don't want to assist. They do not have the means to cope with the magnitude of the problem. We have situations where people who are accustomed getting X amount of money in a welfare check, that has been significantly reduced. And now they're dealing more now with new cases rather than the ones that they were processing before. So you have problems in the country. And when we were saying that in the last estimates where you should have been increasing the welfare grant, instead of that, it was reduced by $2 million. And now we have more people out of work, more opportunities gone. So what do you think is going to happen, ladies and gentlemen? I can tell you what's going to happen. People are going to get desperate and welfare will become under increasing pressure and it's going to reach boiling point. I can tell you as the MP representing a place like the city of Bridgetown, and I know that some of all the other persons in the St. Michael areas in particular have the same problems. We do not have the means to satisfy all of the needs that come to us. And it is really hurtful and painful when you have to turn elderly people away because you don't have enough in your pocket to help. It is hurtful when you can only help to reconnect X amount of lights, electricity, solutions because you cannot pay for all of the light bills that come to you. It is hurtful when people come to you and tell you, look, give me anything to do. I will work doing anything, but you don't have it. It is hurtful when people come to you and tell you they're on their last dollar, they don't know when the next meal is going to come. It is hurtful when parents have children at school that they cannot feed or they can't feed every day. And these are things that we face on a daily basis. These are things, honestly, that really hurts you on the inside, And it's not easy to be able to, having to say no to persons, but that is what we encounter across the landscape in this country. And we are told that we have a government that really cares about the poor people. It's a government for the poor people. Well, I challenge that. And I challenge that because I have a situation which has been highlighted in the press recently. And I'm glad that the press finally woke up. I say finally woke up. I'll tell you why. This is a problem that I have been speaking about for the last 6 years, 5 years. Long before elections were announced, I had the first set of spot meetings in Barbados dealing with the neighborhood upgrade program. I went into the communities dealing with this because for me, this was the greatest injustice that I was encountering in my political life. What is it that I'm talking about? I want to sensitize you because if you really understand what happened here or what is happening, then you must know that you should join us to say to the government, to say to the Minister of Housing, the one before and the current one, enough is enough. We have a situation where for the first time in its history, the Inter-American Development Bank granted a country a loan to deal with housing matters of the magnitude that we are talking about here in Barbados. And this was supposed to be a pilot program that if it was successful, it would have been used in other communities in Barbados where people are socially, economically challenged. In other words, people have difficulty in bringing themselves out of the level that they're living at this point in time. That is what that program was about. If it was successful in Barbados also, the IADB was going to take that program into Latin America and the other Caribbean countries. We were the example. We were the guinea pigs, so to speak. What happened? US $30 million was granted to the government of Barbados for this project. The project initially started with the two most depressed communities within the St. Michael area, and probably even in Barbados. I'm talking about Greenfield and Cat's Castle. Allen View and St. Thomas was added, and then the Garden Land. These four communities were to receive massive infrastructural development overhauls to housing, drainage, sewage, lighting, creating green areas. US $30 million. David Thompson signed for that loan in 2008, and the money was made available since then. March 2008. Michael Lashley was with him at the time that he signed. And what happened, ladies and gentlemen? In 2010, there was a big splash in the newspaper, city communities to get massive assistance. These communities were earmarked for all of this work. The money was there. They did not have to borrow it. It was already there. $9.5 million was supposed to be spent in the Greenfields. $8.4 million in Cat's Castle, $5 million in St. Thomas and Allen View. You understand what that would have done to those areas and to this entire St. Michael? But let me tell you what happened, ladies and gentlemen. You understand that the Greenfield is located right behind the Ministry of Housing? That the ministers can look from where they are and look down into the Greenfield, from where they are. Cat's Castle, for example, is located where the former Member of Parliament for the city of Bridgetown resides. So you have to see these communities every day if you're going to work or if you're going home. What the government did was to take the Minister of State in the Ministry of Housing and made him the person responsible for this project. Not 1 cent was spent on these communities, ladies and gentlemen. At a time when money is hard to come by, at a time when capital projects are non-existent, at a time when economic activity is slow, and we, the country, we are paying commitment fees every year for this money that has not been spent. The first thing that happened, they fired the liaison officers because there were liaison officers for each community. They fired the project team. They told the people that designs were being done and all kind of things. And do you know that the last meeting that was held, certainly in Castle or Greenfield, to tell the people anything whatsoever, was held in 2006, before the Barbados Labour Party went out of office. That is what I'm talking about. And up to this point in time, the only community that had a cent spent was the Garden land. And I don't want to say that that is because that's the only community of the 4 where the MP is a member of the Democratic Labour Party. I don't want to say that. But it is true. Not one blind cent was spent in Castle or Greenfield. Not a blind cent. Out of US 30 million, less than 5 million was spent. But I smell a rat, though. I don't want to say it's a town rat. Because the people from Castle and Greenfield were supposed to occupy the property at Country Towers. That is where they were supposed to go so that their areas could be fixed. So when I saw people moving into those houses, I said something wrong. And up to now, not one red cent. Well, we are trying to do something in Parliament to get some answers about that. We have a question, a parliamentary question to the minister to get some answers about that. Because I fear somehow that this project has been abandoned. The only thing that has happened was that the minister himself, responsible for the project, walked about the city giving $10,000 grant letters to who he wanted to give them to. The last thing that happened is that they told the people in the green fields that since they may not be able to do the project, Urban will fix their homes. Nothing has happened. You don't think that that's something to be real vexed about? It is criminal, man. It's man's inhumanity to man. It's dereliction of duty on the part of Patrick Todd. It's gross neglect on the part of the ministers of housing. And if you tell me you want to house every last person, and if you tell me that you're for the poor man, then you're telling me that the people in Castle, Greenfield, and Island View, they're not Barbadians. They ain't nobody. If that was a middle-income project, goodness gracious, we know it would have started ever since. But something for the poor. And honestly, it saddens me. It saddens me because not only would it have done well for those communities, transforming the communities, what would have happened is that some people, even from up this side, people would have been able to get some work on the projects, Greenfield, not far from here. It means that the people who were working on those projects would have been able to spend some money in all of the shops around the area, generating some and improving the local economy. It means that the hairdressers and the people, the nail technicians would have been able to get some more dollars because the fellas would have gone and given some money to the ladies to help get them, you know, beautify them. And you people, poor people, my people, were robbed of this opportunity because somebody in government just did not care. Shame! So I want to say, ladies and gentlemen, on that score too, that enough is enough. And I want to say this, and I hope it gets where it has to go, because I am waiting. Because if the government puts a high-rise complex or building in Mason Hall Street opposite Castle to fly in the face of those poor people in Castle who have to look up at the monstrosity, then pandemonium can break loose about here. If they build a high-rise in White Park on that spot, looking down into the yards of the people in the green field, pandemonium about here, man. And I'm serious about that. And don't tell me that you're building anything in Mason Hall Street And in White Park, that is going to be like country towers because that ain't for my people. That ain't for low income earners. $900 a month can't be for low income earners. So it means that you plan to bring in people to live in there. And then my people can't get the housing that they deserve. And I say this, I know I have to wrap up. I am a fair man. If the government does something good, even in Parliament, I say so, and I have no problems with that. I love my party, I love my country. But there comes a time when all of these things must be thrown out the window to make sure that justice is served, to make sure that the very best is done, to make sure that we are fair and the equity goes across the board and around this country. And I don't know about you, but I know that even me had more money in my pocket years ago to compare with now. This situation must not be allowed to continue. I'm calling out those of you who are Democratic Labour Party supporters, love your party, but tell the government that the government is going the wrong way. Those of you who may not be either B or D, there's nothing wrong with joining a good cause. Don't mind that we are the Barbados Labour Party and we are pushing this cause. Join a good, a just, and a right cause. Do it for the right reason. Do it for Barbados. Do it for your family and friends, and all will be well. Good night.